Have you ever wondered just how many quality of life changes Genshin has gotten over the last 3 years? I'm gonna guess probably not. The last dev talk really teased a lot of amazing features. Some of them have yet to come, some of them have yet to even be talked about by the devs in more detail, and we even got a few of them in 4.0. So it's got me wondering, what does the timeline of quality of life changes really look like for Genshin? So I'm gonna go over them, but first, quality of life needs to be defined for clarity. Quality of life typically refers to small changes that improve the player experience and just make things smoother, without actually impacting gameplay severely. Some examples of what quality of life in Genshin actually is: increased artifact space, the multi-layered map we just got, being able to lock artifacts easily, artifact loadouts for when and if we ever actually get them. Many gadgets are also quality of life, just basically turned into an usable item. These are great examples of what quality of life can be, so now some examples of what do not qualify as quality of life. Basically anything that gives us primo gems or valuable in-game resources that are limited, like Mora, EXP, and stuff like that. Hangouts, the Serenity Pot, TCG, the Artifact Strongbox, any buffs or additions to the Battle Pass rewards. Then minor things that are purely cosmetic, like skins for characters, the lighting update we just got, the new party screens. These are very nice features that make the game look more polished, but they do not qualify as quality of life. So now let's get into it. Starting with version 1.0, except we're not starting with it, we're skipping it, because that's the launch of the game, so you don't exactly get to call these quality of life changes. Even if you played the beta, it doesn't count. So the real start, version 1.1. Right away, this is the patch that gave us gadgets, and this included many valuable gadgets that gave us actual quality of life, such as the NRE, which allows us to use food without going into the menu. Which for single player, that is a massive quality of life, as you're skipping so many menus and just cumbersome activities to get some healing in. This is also where we got compasses and resonance stones, and while those mostly just prevent you from alt-tabbing to an interactive map, that is still a big part of the gameplay, and it saves you a lot of time. There is of course a bunch of other gadgets here, but most notably we have condensed resin. This change was probably one of the biggest ones we ever got, because it allows us to bank our resin and just say, nah, I don't want to spend this right now, I want to spend it later, which does have a little bit of actual use that does impact the game and allowing you to save up for a brand new domain day one. Its most common uses are definitely just general procrastination of saying, I don't want to spend my resin today, or I want to do artifact domains twice as fast. There are a bunch of settings improvements here, and some small things like equipment locking functions, or a report function for co-op. I suppose having less toxic people around is a form of quality of life. Surplus weapon experience being turned into lesser materials. I can't believe we still don't have this for character experience. For those of you who didn't start in 1.0, it's probably going to sound insane, but characters you sent on expeditions couldn't be used until they weren't in an expedition anymore. And while that is an amazing quality of life feature, it's also one of those things that's like, why the hell was it even like that to begin with? What a terrible decision. You don't even want to give credit for it, because it was horrible. This was also where they went from an overall inventory size limit to a limited one based on each category. I think before it was 10,000 items total in your entire inventory. It's way better now. That's all you need to know. And also original resin went from 120 to a 160 cap, which people also called bigger bowls. It was a big meme back in the day. Version 1.2, a ton of minor little changes here, nothing too big, but this is where we got trackable map pins, which not really a feature I've ever used, but I gotta imagine it has helped some people out there. And here we have a big one. Adds the option to repeat a domain challenge from inside the domain. The thing is, I don't even remember that not being a thing. I can't imagine the pain of having to leave in a domain and re-enter the domain every time you want to do it on PS4. The loading screens on PS4 are atrocious. If you're on PS4, my condolences. You're really struggling, even if you don't know it. It's really bad. It's really bad, and it's probably even worse now. This is the version we also saw the change to how Sundays work for artifact domains, and I think they might have changed other days too. I don't quite remember. It was so long ago, but it was a really good change. We also got the introduction of pre-installation for PC, which is fantastic because nobody wants to be downloading a patch when they're really eager to gamble. Version 1.3, we got controller support added for iOS 14 and above, but no Android still, to this day. It's ridiculous. You can add enhancement ore by holding the button, which was a really good change for controllers. On PC, we got auto clickers and stuff. We didn't really need that. This was also the version that they stopped making events cost resin, which is bordering on not quality of life because that's actually saving us an in-game resource, but I wanted to mention it anyway because that's a huge change. And this is also when mobile got the ability to pre-install an update as well. Version 1.4, and this is when we got the ability to adjust our world level, which is very helpful when you're trying to let people join your world that are maybe at a lower stage of progression than you. The condensed resin cap was also increased from 3 to 5, once again just making everything a little bit easier. Spiral Abyss also got its first big change here, allowing us to be able to restart mid-stage or leave when we're going into the next one. This is also also the version that they started to allow people to actually control which languages their game had, which saved a lot of space, which is good for mobile because, you know, not everyone has the biggest phones. In version 1.5, we didn't see any significant quality of life changes. There are a few, which I'm showing here on screen, a couple of really big ones that I don't really know the value of to do with controller and mobile, so I'm really not qualified to judge them, but maybe they were big changes. 1.6, starting with a very simple change, but this was big for me, and that is being able to open the party screen on PC with the L key. That is huge. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of quality of life changes, you know? It's like something that's so small can be so impactful for somebody, but that was like, I was really excited for that one. We got the auto-lock 4-star weapons, which is very good for security purposes. The increased load limit of the teapot. Now, this is a little bit contentious because I would understand if you wouldn't want to call this quality of life. I barely want to call it quality of life, but the problem is bad even after this change, but it was so much worse even before that I barely considered the teapot even usable. I think it's worth mentioning, but again, I would understand if you don't want to call that quality of life. We got more slots for weapon EXP when actually upgrading. We got the co-op mode, being able to forge and actually craft in it, which was pretty big for co-op players. And the last big one here is being able to automatically track enemies from the Adventurer's Handbook, which is really big for people who don't want to go to the interactive map or something like that to just kill a handful of enemies that they currently need. 2.0 Inazuma. Teapot Gardening, which allows us to lazily farm a select few Ascension materials. Red Feather Fan, which allowed gliding to be a little bit faster, but it didn't get better until we got the gadget loadouts a lot later. Selecting which region our dailies show up in. Also an excellent change, especially since I didn't particularly like doing dailies in Liyue. Teapot portable waypoints, which were very useful for getting right next to your mansion. This is also when PlayStation could link their account to an email and play on PC and mobile. Map pins being increased to 150, which wasn't enough back then, and it's definitely not enough now. Version 2.1 wasn't anything significant. We got some improvements to the teapot load limit when replacing repeated objects, but more importantly, Ayaka's idle voice line frequency was fixed because she was bugged out and she was doing her idles way too much. You think Zhongli is bad? Oh, it wasn't even close. Version 2.2, here we saw the first increase to the artifact inventory space from 1,000 to 1,500, which is quite the generous increase. Being able to actually learn furnishing blueprints from the crafting menu or crafting bench, whatever it may have been, that was a pretty nice change at the time as well. There was also a nice little change to aiming mode where things like Zhongli's shield and Raiden's little skill just wouldn't impede your vision as much. Here comes 2.3 with yet another feature that I can't remember ever not having, which is the ability to lock artifacts from the acquisition screen. And apparently we also couldn't even view the attributes on that screen. Again, I don't remember not having, like, I farmed so many artifacts before, then why don't I remember this? Am I repressing it because it was so bad? Maybe, because the idea of not having those sounds horrible. Apparently that was our reality. This is a really bad one. And then there was a co-op change where if somebody left it, just filled it in with somebody from the host party, which I guess that's good. 2.4 with a handful of little small changes. Gift mailbox for birthday mail, which is good if you ever want to read the old ones. The ability to make custom group furnishings in the teapot. The ability to customize the shortcut wheel, which I don't really use this on PC, but from what I understand, I think this is quite the useful thing on console. Okay, now here's a big one that a lot of people probably aren't going to know the significance of. They adjusted the height of the central stage disc in all levels of floors 9 to 12 of the Spiral Abyss. Now, it's hard to really explain the significance of this because it's gone now, but if you used to play a character like Ganyu who used aim shot, you would actually get stuck on the goddamn floor in the Spiral Abyss, and it could end up getting you hit by things that you could have otherwise dodged just by walking. It also impeded units like Sayu or Mona's dash, and just a lot of, it was horrible. Just such a small little height difference in the floor caused me so much grief. Corpses also stopped acting as viable targets for things like Yoimiya's auto attacks, which sounds incredibly stupid. That's because it was. The funny thing is I accepted this. I was like, whatever, it's part of the shitty auto targeting system. Like, I never really thought like, oh, this is ever gonna get better. So when they changed it, it was like really just a pleasant surprise. In 2.5, we didn't see anything significant. They did the same central disc change to Spiral Abyss except a 1 to 8. Then they allowed us to sort artifacts by up to 2 affixes, allowing us to say, I mostly want crit rate, but I also want to see what else has the highest crit damage. This is one of those changes that I didn't know I wanted it, but when I got it, I was like, thank God it's here. 2.6, same deal, nothing significant except they did the height of the central disc things to some domains as well. Version 2.7 is when we were allowed to actually complete weekly quests for a battle pass before the battle pass came out. For most people, this was really just a small little time saver, but for those of you who actually struggled to complete the battle pass, this was probably pretty significant. Version 2.8, another patch with nothing significant. Again, we had the Spectre nerf, but those don't count as quality of life, but I wanted to mention them anyway because they definitely improved the quality of my life, those annoying little bastards. 3.0, we got the fishing line stabilizer gadget, which is one of the best additions of fishing we've ever gotten, just allowing you to fish very lazily. This one actually new to me. I didn't know this until I looked it up in the patch notes and read it for this video. That is, you can actually search in achievements. Now, I'm probably never going to use this, but it's kind of neat that it's there. We got wood conversion in case you don't want to go around hitting trees. Billet conversion, which borderline not really quality of life, but it's nice that you can convert the old ones into new ones. And my personal favorite in these patch notes is increasing the party loadouts from 4 to 10. That was huge. Friends limit increased from 45 to 60. I'm sure that helped out some people. Okay, the 10 party loadout thing, that's not my favorite. My favorite is this, actually, where they optimize the experience of moving through complex terrain with the following characters, which is basically like Mona, Ayaka, Yelan, like those kind of characters. Like, moving with them was horrible. You get stuck on everything, even things that make no goddamn sense. Quite frankly, I'm surprised this one didn't show up in the bug fixes, but it is in the optimization, so quality of life it is. And then of course a bunch of smaller things, but that's all for the significant things. Version 3.1, we had one single change here, and that is actually teapot clipping was made an actual feature instead of a random glitch. Honestly, kudos to them for doing this. They could have left it in the game as it was and just let us keep doing it, which was kind of janky and from what I understand didn't work on PlayStation, or they could have removed it outright, which would have been the worst option, but instead they implemented it as an actual feature because they knew how much we liked it. 3.2, another teapot only one where we got the replication system. I actually still haven't used this one because I really haven't touched my teapot since Inazuma. 3.3, even more teapot stuff, but some other stuff too. The most significant thing here is definitely the artifact filtering options. They gave us many more options to really narrow things down and go through our artifact inventory a lot more efficiently. Version 3.4, nothing really significant here either. Version 3.5, picking up the slack a little bit, allowing us to teleport directly to the Teapot's mansion, which is fantastic. Steps on the toes of the importance of the waypoints by a little bit, but this feature is still fantastic and I love both of them. Version 3.6 expands on the Teapot's replication system, allowing a guest in your teapot to request the ability to replicate something that you built. Version 3.7 added one single big thing, but God was it a good one. They added the gadget quick swap function, which quite honestly, they didn't even really highlight this that much in the patch notes. So much so that either they didn't put it in the initial run or I just skimmed over it and missed it like a lot of people did, because it was quite the surprise for many when they actually got in the game and saw it. Version 3.8 improved Hangouts by a little bit by allowing you to see narrative checkpoints. Once again, this is a feature that I have not seen, but I gotta imagine that can be quite helpful when you're trying to go for full completion or just re-experience parts of the Hangout again. Commissions can now be tracked persistently after you basically, once you complete a commission, it's just going to automatically navigate you to another one nearby. There have definitely been times where I've been stubbornly looking for a commission and I refuse to press F1 open my guide and track it in my book to find it. Now I don't have to do that anymore. And finally, this brings us to the modern day 4.0, where I hope we start to see a turning point in how significant the quality of life is. And with what we got so far, it looks pretty promising. For starters, we got the multi-layered map. After Sumeru, pretty much everybody was wanting this feature. Interactive maps started to get it before the game did, and it was very apparent that we needed this feature immediately. We got the ability to spectate duels in TCG, which is fantastic because anyone who's played things like Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, whatever, you know that spectating other people's games is kind of like a core feature of these. It's also good for setting up tournaments and stuff. More artifact space again, but this time we didn't get the 500 increase like last time, we only got 300, but you know, anything is good, I guess. One thing that I was actually excited for, even though I don't actually use a controller, but this is way more likely to make me use one, is support for gyroscope. Some of you might not have experienced gyroscope, but if you played Breath of the Wild and aimed the bow with the Joy-Con by physically moving it around, that's what it is. And it can be really helpful for people who aren't really good with joysticks or don't like them, such as myself. I really suck at aiming with a joystick. I'm PC like through and through. So when a game gives me the option to use gyroscope, you bet your ass I'm doing it. And that's it. We have things on the horizon. Like they talked about a new way to do dailies, which are definitely going to be quality of life if it's similar to Honkai Star Rails, giving players a much more open and free-form way to complete their dailies. They also talked about potentially something to do with artifact loadouts or something to do with making equipping artifacts easier. They were very vague with it, and we have our hopes and dreams, but we're gonna have to wait to see what they come up with. Artifact loadouts has always been my number one, but I still have things like, you know, I want buff timers and actual buffs that you can click and read or like scroll over. I want a shield health bar. I've been asking for these things for a long time, but what I want to know from you guys, guys is like, what of the changes that we've gotten so far have been the most game changing for you? Which one would you never give up? It's a tough call for me because I can't imagine a world where expeditions lock my characters out, especially because I send Yolanda on every day and like I use her more than anyone else. But I consider it like a feature that like never should have been, it shouldn't have been that way in the first place. It was terrible. So it's good they changed it so quickly because God, other than that one, it's probably gadget loadouts for me. But again, I would love to hear what you like. So thank you to my members and my patrons for supporting me. As always, thank you to you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!